Hello and welcome back to the APSCC webinar series. I'm Christopher Slaughter, your moderator for the series. This is the beginning of season 4 of the APSCC webinars. We've been doing about 45 of these so far. So that's an excellent track record, and we've been delighted to have so many of you join us as we've rolled out these sessions, not quite on a weekly basis, but pretty close. For the remainder of the year, for this season 4, it'll take us through the end of 2021. For the next 3 months, we've got about another 15 of them lined up for you. So we will be looking at pretty much a weekly rollout of the series. This week, we're delighted to be looking at Constellations. Joining us as the moderator for this session is Nathan de Ruyter from Euroconsult. He'll be speaking with Harsh Verma from SES, along with Meher Malam from Sky and Space Global, and Manik Venakota from Telesat Leo. So please do join us and enjoy the session on Constellations.
Welcome all to a new APSCC webinar on satellite constellations. NGSO constellations continue to gain momentum as demonstrated by the recent satellite launches, new investments secured, and as well many commercial developments. This increasing dominance of NGSO is also reflected in the supply forecast. If you look at the numbers over the next 5 years, 90% of the supply additions will come from NGSO. In terms of the APAC region, I think there's a very large market potential that is very attractive for NGSO capacity, but also there are some very unique regulatory and distribution challenges. So today's webinar will have a number of NGSO satellite operators that will share their commercial strategy to unlock these market potential, but also explore paths on how to achieve commercial success. So we have a great lineup of speakers we'll introduce to you right now. So first of all, I have Harsh Verma, Regional Director at Asia for SES Networks. Welcome, Harsh. And Manik Venakota, Director, Commercial and Product Development at Telesat Leo. And last but not least, Meher Malam, CEO at Sky and Space Global. Welcome all. So gentlemen, what I would like to do first, I think it would be good and helpful if each of you can give a kind of a brief description of the constellation, but also maybe give a quick progress update of 2021 with so many developments we've heard about, but kind of a 3-minute summary would be very helpful to get the thing started. So Harsh, can I give you first the floor to?
Sure. Thank you, Nathan, for the introduction, and thanks APSCC for giving us the opportunity to share this platform. In 2014, SES had embarked on a very exciting journey with the medium Earth orbit satellite constellation called the O3b. I started off with O3b as well in 2012. So I have seen the days when we were selling PowerPoints to really selling credible customer-centric solutions. O3b was quite a success. I mean, in the satellite industry, it created a market which never existed for satellite. And building on that success, we are now about to launch our next generation medium Earth orbit constellation called the O3b mPOWER. So mPOWER is a very exciting innovation in space and on the ground, which would bring huge amount of capacity, scalability, and the flexibility to customers across the globe, but mainly in the Asia Pacific region, while retaining the original benefits of the predecessor constellation of high throughput and low latency. Today, SES operates a sizable business, both in Southeast Asia and the Pacific region, using our existing assets, both on MEO and GEO satellites. I think with mPOWER, we are able to meet the demands of today, but looking at future cloud-enabled services, 5G, O3b mPOWER adds to our capability in a huge way. And the key markets, I mean, that we see that will be suitable, I mean, for O3b mPOWER, I mean, would be really 4G, 5G backhauls, cloud services for enterprises, obviously the digital inclusion projects in Southeast Asia and South Asia, and also secure communications for defense. We are on track in terms of our program schedule. It's a fully funded program. $2 billion investments has gone into it. The program schedule is on track. Boeing is manufacturing our satellites. The first batch of satellites are undergoing the last stages of testing. Then they'll be shipped to Cape Canaveral for the inaugural launch from SpaceX by the end of this year. The constellation is 11 satellites. We'll launch 3 satellites in one launch. So first 3 go up end of this year. We'll follow it up with the second launch in Q1, and we'll launch global services in September of 2022 with 6 satellites. On the ground side, the gateway build out and the TT&C gateways are started. We will be ready before commercial launch of services. And then we'll add to this capability by adding 5 more satellites in 2022, late 22 and 2024. So we'll grow this constellation to 11 satellites, but that's not where we are stopping. We're looking at even growing this constellation further as the take-up increases. And just as a final note, very proud that customers have put their trust and confidence in us, signing up for O3b mPOWER even before the launch. I think because of our, it's a testimony to our services on the existing O3b constellation. To name a few, Orange, multinational telco, has signed up with O3b mPOWER, and another interesting vertical cruise, Carnival Corporation for the Princess Cruises, has committed to O3b mPOWER. These are the 2 major customers, and we continue to grow this list as we head toward our launch. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, no, that's a great introduction, and I think we have tons of things to talk about. We'll definitely do that. Let me first give the other speakers as well the opportunity to do the similar kind of introduction and an update on 2021. Maybe Manik, over here, tell us at Leo, maybe you want to give us an update on where things stand.
Sure. Thanks, Nathan. And thanks, APSCC. A quick overview of our LEO project. In 2021, we've called it Lightspeed. So we've given it a name now. So it's the Telesat Lightspeed project. A quick overview of the constellation. It's a low Earth orbit constellation consisting of just under 300 satellites, which gives you full global coverage, including the poles to anywhere on Earth. The way we have differed from our design from other LEOs is from day one, we've been very much focused on the enterprise market or the B2B market. So some of all the markets that Harsh just mentioned, whether it is backhaul and connectivity to the telcos or to the mobility market, whether it's the maritime market or the aero market or for the government market. So being focused on the enterprise market has helped us fine tune our design and make sure that all key enterprise requirements are met. It could be global coverage, like I mentioned, but also being able to deliver very, very high capacity in very small areas so that we are able to serve dense hotspots. And the overall constellation itself is very flexible because no one knows where demand is going to come from. So the constellation has to be capable to deliver that. In terms of 2021, a lot of progress in 2021. Earlier this year, we mentioned that Thales Alenia Space is the chosen supplier, not just for the satellites, but for the end-to-end system engineering as well. So we've been doing a lot of work with Thales this year. For example, we have breadboards of all the key components that will go on the satellites in labs being tested as we speak. Some of the critical components like the antennas, the onboard processors, the inter-satellite link terminals that Telesat is going to put on all 300 satellites. So tremendous work happening on that front. We had also announced SatixFy as our modem partner, or at least the core modem technology partner. So along with SatixFy, again, a lot of testing in the lab with actual breadboards of modems for both user terminals, modems for what we call landing stations or the gateways in traditional parlance. We've even demonstrated how the onboard processor on the satellite is going to talk to the ground infrastructure. So a lot of progress on overall end-to-end network testing to make sure that all the key components are tracking well. User terminals, very important component when you talk of constellations. And for all our 4 markets that I mentioned, we are making sure that we've down selected the preferred vendors for the user terminals by market. And we've announced, for example, ThinCom. That's a public announcement we made earlier this year. That's obviously focused on the in-flight connectivity market, and more to follow later this year for the different markets. So that's some of the key highlights of where we stand, and really looking forward to your questions, Nathan.
Sure, we'll have plenty of time to further dive into some of the points you mentioned there. Now I want to give it to the floor to Mirmolim, which can give us a bit of a different perspective, because as the SES and Telesat, cover more the broadband segment, Sky and Space Global. To my knowledge, at least, was more focused on the IoT. And yeah, happy to see you again, Mir, and maybe give us an update on where things stands with Sky and Space Global.
Sure. Thank you very much, Nathan, and thanks APSCC for inviting me to this talk. Yes, you are correct. We're a different creature in the sense that we're a new space company relying on nanosatellites, very small space vehicles to deliver connectivity to anyone, anywhere, anytime. And you are correct that we target the IoT machine-to-machine market as the first segment that we will provide services to. But Sky and Space Global has developed a very unique technology and tested it in space. We have launched our Pathfinder mission, or proof of concept, if you would like to call it that, with the 3 Diamond satellites in 2017. Those 3 satellites are still operating. And we have demonstrated with these satellites that you can actually provide connectivity with nanosatellites. And you can provide capabilities as simple as, data store and forward, which is very easy to do, but all the way up to near real-time services such as instant messaging or financial transactions through SMS, through text messages, up to doing an actual real-time phone call, which is a very, very challenging thing to do because of the synchronicity issues and the data compression and all of that. So we've proven that already in space. And because we have developed a system that controls an entire network, a constellation of satellites in space, and is capable of providing real-time services, entering into the IoT market, which is developing very, very rapidly across the globe, is something which is a good starting point for us. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking about a constellation of low Earth orbit satellites, you do need quite a lot of satellites in order to provide global service at 24/7 real-time capabilities. So the fact that we're entering the IoT, the Internet of Things, and the machine-to-machine level of services, starting with fixed asset monitoring and going all the way up to real-time connectivity, we can do it from day one with the first satellite. And that's what we plan to do. Where Sky and Space is, yes, we've had a challenging 2 years. COVID has hit us quite strongly in the middle of a fundraising round, which has caused the company to kind of calculate its way financially. Fortunately, we're out of that. The company has been recapitalized. Most of 2021, we've been improving our capabilities and software, but also completing a tender for the manufacturing of our first commercial satellites. So the 3 up there, technology-proving vehicles. The next one, full commercial assets that will provide services from day one.
Yeah, that's very great introduction. I was just want to follow up on one item. I think clearly it has been a challenging times of financial. There was like an announcement earlier this year, I think, involving with Virgin Orbit. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what kind of the partnership or agreement entails? As they are right now in this SPAC kind of listing process, is there anything that involves Sky and Space Global as well?
Well, all I can say is what has been announced, especially since, as you said, Virgin Orbit are going through their SPAC process at the moment. So this is a sensitive process. Virgin Orbit and us had a very good relationship since 2016, when we signed the first agreement with them. Since they believe in what we're doing and they believe in the future of IoT connectivity, they are now a major shareholder of Sky and Space Global. And they've said in many occasions, Dan Hart, their CEO, and other people in the Virgin Group as well, have said and emphasized how they think that Sky and Space Global is important for them. That's all I can say at the moment. This partnership is obviously very, very important for us. And it's a testimony of the belief the market has, not only in Sky and Space. You've mentioned that in your introduction. We're seeing all kinds of deals and a lot of activity globally. going into low Earth orbit constellations or constellations of a lot of satellites providing connectivity. And as you can see, there are many layers. And I have to say, you know, sometimes people ask me, we've got this company, they're gonna beat everybody else, or we've got this company. No, there's a need for all kinds of services. I mean, just look at this conversation. Each one of us represents a different company with a different solution to a different segment of the market, and all of these segments needs a tailor-made solution that is providing their requirements. So there's room for everyone. We're happy that Virgin Orbit are helping us in our journey.
Great. Let's move into the discussion, and let's try, obviously, to make it as much APAC focused today in our discussion. So, lead-up question, I would say, is on target markets, right? So, if you would have to pick maybe one market that your constellation is addressing that is specifically well suited to address market requirements or market needs in Asia Pacific. So first, can you name it, explain it, how the constellation well suits that kind of demand? And maybe as well, if you have some kind of additional color, are there kind of really the user requirements different in Asia Pacific, or is it really something that is more of a common denominator across different regions? So maybe Harsh, maybe you can give us a start, and then we go through the panelists.
Asia Pacific, firstly, Nathan, a very important question. It is $1 billion question because of the large investments going into these constellations. At SES, we see Asia Pacific as a very strategic market, and I think probably all the satellite operators do. Let's first take a step back and look at the current demand and the projections, what the industry projections say. So according to Euroconsult, the backhaul and IP trunk market was 80 Gbps in 2020, which is expected to grow to 400 Gbps, and the enterprise rural connectivity will grow from 55 Gbps to 600 Gbps. So these are huge demands that will require scalable and much different solutions that exist today. With O3b mPOWER, look at three key market segments as our focus. Firstly, mobile backhaul. Both 4G, the upgrade to 4G, and the adoption of 5G technology by mobile operators in the region. APAC is home to half the world's population, with younger demographic of people. Social networking is huge, and people are getting onto the internet for the first time through their mobile phones and consuming mobile data internet in a big way. Reliance Jio, for example, in India, has overtaken North America in terms of usage, and they're showing more than 15 gigabytes usage per month per subscriber. And we see this trend not slowing down. It will continue to grow. And we see that key countries for us for mobile backhauling are India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and the PNG. Digital inclusion projects are the second wave that we are focused towards. As of 2020, 42% of the APAC population do not have access to mobile internet. More than 1 billion people are offline. And there is a huge latent demand that can be met with the right set of solutions and the right support by the regulatory bodies. And what we have seen is connectivity has taken forefront. It has become very fundamental and a basic citizen right in all the countries. And digital inclusion plans being drawn out by the government are becoming aggressive and very stringent. SES has already, is part of this wave. We are working with Bhakti in Indonesia, DICT in Philippines, and MCMC in Malaysia, where we are already delivering services using our current GEO, HTS, and MEO services. And we continue to hope to scale this with O3b mPOWER. The last segment that I find that is a suitability for us is IP trunk and the fiber resiliency. So fiber has been deployed massively, but it still suffers from reliability concerns. It is not, I would say, the Western world reliability on the fiber systems, and telcos are still looking for fiber node resiliency, but this requires massive scale in terms of throughput, latencies, of course, and the flexibility to dynamically allocate, deallocate capacity. They're not going to pay for always on capacity. So we see this market more as a throughput driven market rather than number of terminals. And O3B Empower has been designed with SD-WAN solutions so that you could have load sharing solutions with fiber. And the ARC system, the adaptive resource control system that we've developed with Kythera, will ensure that the satellite resources are optimally used, efficiently allocated and deallocated as per demand.
Great. Manik, so Harsh mentioned particularly 4G backhaul, rural inclusion projects as kind of the prime market opportunity in APAC. Do you agree? Do you have a different view on where do you see, Lightspeed being having the biggest commercial impact?
Sure. No, fully agree with Harsh. That's a very important market, very large market. Just the nuance that we look at is the way the markets want that demand to be addressed. It might not be, there's one end of need for large trunking links. So very, very, very big pipes, that's definitely there. But when you think of, like Harsh mentioned, Bhakti, for example, Bhakti is looking at tens of thousands of sites to be sometimes perhaps even going to hundreds of thousands of sites with very small pipes to each single village or each single community. And we're seeing that story play out in Philippines, in India. So that's one market for sure, but it'll cover the entire spectrum from very large trunking links, let's say, to the Pacific Island kind of countries, to smaller typical backhaul links to villages and communities. But again, APAC is such a big market, so that's definitely one end of the market. And then you've also got the Australia and Japan and China, and their mobility is becoming big and even bigger going forward. Think about the penetration of in-flight connectivity is really low, and it's set to grow. All the countries are looking at the same experience that a European or American airlines want to give to their customers. Cruise is picking up. Merchant shipping was anyway, most of the ships are in that part of the world. So that's definitely a big demand. So overall mobility also we definitely see as an important market in addition to the terrestrial connectivity market.
Would you generally say that the Asia Pacific market is underserved, or is there something materially different in terms of the user requirements? Hopefully, the connectivity is relatively, everybody agrees. I think there's huge upside in connecting people, but bringing the service or the current services that they currently are available, is there something that is materially different that you can provide with this, and or is currently different? Any kind of user requirement you hear is different from other kind of conversations you have in other regions. Just wondering.
Right. Yeah, two main gaps that we see in the Asia Pacific market. One is the capacity. There is compared to what is there today and where these markets want to go, because they are. Most of them are mobile first countries. Harsh mentioned about 15 gigabyte per subscriber in India, and that continues to grow. So if you want to provide even backhaul to a village, you start talking about multiple tens or sometimes in hundreds of megabits of backhaul to a single village. So there were some estimates like 2 terabits of capacity is what just India needs for backhaul. With Bhakti and Satriya, the various projects, it's if you add it all up, they want at least 1 terabit plus just for Indonesia. So these are all really large capacities that are not available in the market today. So that's a positive. I mean, that's collectively for the entire industry, that's a plus. But the other side of the coin is the economics of the market. Yes, there is a lot of demand, but it's again, it drives from what is the ARPU of the subscribers that the telcos or the ISPs are serving. So in turn, the backhaul economics have to tie to that. So yes, there's a lot of capacity demand, but has to be at the right economics for the capacity, for the hardware. So we'll have to fine tune our commercial plans to align for that high demand but competitive economics scenario.
Great. Yeah, we might talk a little bit about it later as well, and on some of these economics and what kind of step changes are required from where we are today to where we need to get to. But I would also want to discuss with her maybe again more on the IoT. We always see a lot of use cases, so there seems to be plenty of opportunities to deploy these networks. But if you would have to rank 1, 2, maybe 3 kind of really top applications you expect in the APAC region, what would it be? It's really interesting to see where you specifically see the opportunity.
Well, I would first start by, of course, I agree with my colleagues. I would add 2 comments. One, it's very difficult to look at the entire APAC region as one collective. It's very different. I mean, you cannot compare requirements, specifications, and services in Japan or Singapore to, let's say, the Philippines or Malaysia or Papua New Guinea. It's very, very different. Different markets, different requirements, different specifications, and different characteristics. So we at least do not look at APAC as one package, but as a very luring opportunity. As Harch has said, the numbers are mind-boggling. Over 1 billion people, rapidly developing economies, and we expect the opportunity will actually be better than the expectation or the forecast today. So that'll be one comment. The other comment I would make is what we expect we will see is any services provided to that region, specifically to unserved areas like the Philippines or Indonesia or similar areas, would not only be a straightforward economic opportunity, but they would have a ripple effect. They would have a high impact on the entire economy of that region. And by providing services to these areas, you would actually create more opportunities, more activities, more business, and the economy will continue to develop, and that would increase your own revenue opportunity at the end of the day. Now, when you're looking at IoT, the differences are becoming smaller. So when you're talking about broadband, as I've said, there are countries and economies in that region which have a huge demand for high-speed connectivity. And there are areas where there's nothing at all. And if you come in with even a low-end service, this is still more than they need. When you're talking about IoT, it's a bit different, because at the end of the day, when it's, let's say, smart agriculture sensor, all it needs is a few kilobits. It doesn't really care where it sits. That's all you need to get from that livestock monitor or that irrigation system or whatever. Same thing goes for asset monitoring. You know, if you monitor cargo traveling on a cargo ship, or if you're providing IoT and machine-to-machine services to small fishing boats, again, it's the same IoT service regardless of the entire ecosystem. Where we see the opportunities is in correlation to the number of satellites that will be deployed and the level of service. So if you look at the low number of satellites, all you can provide, or what you can start to provide, is fixed assets, so low speed moving or no moving at all assets on the ground, and services that require a few pickups per day, like, as I've said, smart agriculture or remote asset monitoring, stuff like that. The more satellites you have, now you can address additional segments in the market, such as fishing fleets monitoring or vehicle fleets monitoring. You know, if you have a truck, it travels at 100 kilometers per hour, you need a signal every few seconds in order to know where it is. So if you look, let's say, at the IoT map, the more satellites you have, the more pickups per day you would have, and more segments will be opened up for you. In our case, because we can provide near real-time services from day one with a very small number of satellites, because of our technology, our inter-satellite links, our micro gateways on the ground, which we can talk about later on if you want, we start with the kind of low pickups per day services. And as we deploy more and more satellites, we enter additional segments until we can provide actual real-time connectivity to anyone within our footprint on the ground. And in that sense, I don't think the Asian Pacific region is that different than any other region in the world. It's the same requirements and the same specifications, because we're talking about Internet of Things and machine-to-machine connectivity.
Yeah, but maybe also picking up on something which you already said about APAC not necessarily being a region of constitutes of many countries. What does make it a little bit unique, I think, in Asia Pacific in general, is that the regulatory market access can sometimes be a challenging process. So just looking at the largest countries, simply China, Indonesia, India, well, I think you all have this experience how challenging that can be. So how does it reflect in your go-to-market plan, basically? Are you kind of put all the efforts in that because those are the markets to get to rest first? You put it like kind of later in the go-to-market plans because there are some other countries, maybe like Philippines or others, that have more of an open sky, would probably be more easily to access. So how do you reflect that? Maybe Murray, maybe you can go on this, and we'll have the others as well giving their opinion on this.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. This is a huge challenge. I mean, you can have the top of the line technology and the best satellites in the world and the highest broadband capable transmitters or whatever. But if you do not have the regulatory approval, there's nothing that you can do with it. We understood that on day one when we started the company, and we've invested a lot of effort into that. In fact, we have brought our spectrum into use with our first satellites launched 4 years ago. And that has taken care of the, let's say, the space segment part. So we've got that spectrum licensed already, and we can operate anywhere we want with that. As for the ground segment or the licensing on the ground, our approach is to start as early as possible, work with our customers as channel partners, our B2B customers that will help us. I mean, they're on the ground. They know the regulator, they know the ecosystem, they know what needs to be done much better than us. And we have a shared common interest to make it work. So that's our approach, and we try to deal with it as early as possible, because if we would wait, there is the chance that it would just not be there in time. So we would have assets in space, but there's nothing that we can do with them. We cannot sell any services. And another approach, of course, and that's also something that we're doing, is demonstrate the added value to the governments themselves, to the regulators. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're providing to, let's take, for example, the Philippines or Indonesia, is a connectivity system like no other in an affordable cost to anyone. And as you know, there are tens of thousands of islands and hundreds of millions of people living over there without any connectivity. And we can provide a solution. That solution has value to the government itself, and that we believe can help us get through that regulatory hurdle. But I believe my colleagues will also agree, this is a very big challenge, and it has to be dealt with very early in your journey.
Yes, that's I think very well summarized. So Harsh, maybe as well, O3B obviously has been working around and have experienced firsthand how challenging this could be. Rolling out O3B mPOWER, do you see that you have disadvantage over some of the others, or is there still a lot of hurdles in, again, we really talk about these big market opportunities in Indonesia and India. Where does it stand? What are the lessons learned, and how does, let's say, your rollout of mPOWER reflect your go-to-market strategy in general to deal with these regulatory challenges?
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, I agree with my colleague, right? I mean, that APAC is a very, very fragmented market, right? I mean, and regulations differ from country to country, very stringent. Some of them, China, India, have been largely controlled. Look, I mean, I think the markets, I mean, what we see, I mean, in our go-to-market strategy, and especially for the larger countries like India and Indonesia, that there are challenges, but I feel we have a head start. For example, in Indonesia, we have the authorizations of the O3B existing MEO constellation. in some of the other countries where we are doing mobility services for directly to end users, right? Genting Cruises or Carnival or Royal Caribbean. We had to go and do a lot of legwork on the regulatory side to get market access in pretty much all the countries where the ship roams. And so we have a head start. We don't think the O3B Empower we will need to invest that much significant regulatory work to get approvals. But I think more importantly, I mean, we need to have the right partnerships in place. In some of the countries, for example, it might not be just possible without a local presence being there. So we have a partnership in place. For example, in Indonesia, right? I mean, we've done investments on the gateways. We're rolling out networks, but we work with a local licensed partner. So it's very important in APAC or mainly Southeast Asia and South Asia, very important that you have a scalable partnership with a local licensed operator that can help you get access and also help you deliver, I mean, these projects. Then when I talk about India in specific, right? I mean, we've seen the draft Spacecom policy that came out last year. I mean, it looks very encouraging. Some of the steps that India has taken, like opening up the IFMC, the mobility sector for VSAT services, then getting rid of that national long distance or NLD license for mobile backhauling. Mobile backhauling is a huge untapped market in India. Unbelievable that satellite hasn't even scratched the surface for this vertical. So I feel, I mean, the new Spacecom policy, when it comes into effect, whatever way or form, of course, we promote open sky policies, fair competition to everyone, not creating these artificial barriers that promote national operators versus foreign, but really have a light touch regulation and help really have a right technology for the right application. So India, we are very hopeful that the new policy that will come out would definitely be forward-looking.
Okay. Yeah, maybe Manik, talking about India as well. How do you, I suppose everybody see this as encouraging. Is this something that you would expect when Lightspeed will be up, that you still need a lot of work around, or the timing should kind of align? You put a lot of focus on the regulatory side already, although the satellite constellation still, needs to be built and so on. So how do you approach this market access issue in general?
Yeah, I'll pick up from where Harsh stopped. Though for some of the countries in the Southeast Asia region, it has been complicated, but we are seeing some green shoots. The regulators and the governments are realizing that to fundamentally bridge the digital divide, satellite has to become a part of the equation. And how do we make it simpler through simplifying, whether it's single window clearance or simplifying how to operate in the country. So that's very positive. Harsh mentioned about India. Indonesia has taken a great lead with the Bhakti program. But every country, all the countries we talked to, Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, everyone is trying to look at how do we simplify it so that citizens win at the end of it. And Telesat, from our history, we operate in all of these markets today. The local partners really bring a lot of value to the table. I don't think it is a negative that you're forced to work with the service local provider, because the requirements are unique. You need to perhaps offer local services like taking care of the field service and so forth. So local partners do bring and complete the solution to make sure your satellite capacity is usable, your network is usable. So I think it's positive. I didn't mention, you mentioned about a timeline. Yeah, we go live in 2024, but we've been working on this topic for some time. We mentioned Nelco in India, a Tata Group company who we are working with about how to better understand the India market. We already are one of the providers in the Bhakti Satria Bhakti program today. So we're going to continue exploring that, and so is it for all the other markets. Our go-to market is primarily hinged on a a service provider-led model. We do not intend to be the direct provider of services. That has worked well for us for the last 50 years, even in the APAC region, and we're going to continue on that same model for the future.
Is there still a lot of obviously geo satellites are, I think, well understood in the region. Is there a lot of additional work to do around NGSO in some of these countries in education, or does, at the end, you see more and more, obviously, with Starlink and others bring a lot of kind of attention to the NGSO constellation that really helped in the last discussions? Do you see a change there, or is still a lot of education work to be done on NGSO?
I think it's coming back to does it help them to serve, bridge the digital divide, get better economics, and so forth. And since it is helping them do that with more players in the market and better economics, I think the Asian markets are in fact more interested in making this happen. I don't think any of the large countries in that part of the world, except for China, have mentioned about doing their own NGSO constellation, because these are big, complex programs. So they do see the value of complementing where there's requirement for LEO constellations at least to come in and serve with the right methodology.
Okay. Yeah, maybe picking up on that on China, obviously there's a lot of focus on all the kind of constellations. But China is moving ahead as well with a broadband constellation and IoT constellation. Does that impact your go-to-market strategy, Murray? Is that something that, because of China developing something their own, that you would say, okay, China maybe upside, but a lot of trouble regulatory and all this kind of thing, not my prime market? Or do you have a different view about that? So A, if it's China, then kind of off your kind of hit list, and B, do you see it as a significant threat? Because obviously China and when they have a big national market, but constellations have a global presence by nature, and they could expand obviously in neighboring countries or countries where there are some agreements with. So how do you see China as a market opportunity and the constellations from the Chinese constellation as a threat to your business?
Okay, I'll assume that.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, I wanted to ask Murray. I will give you the opportunity after Manik and Harsh.
Sorry, I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah,
all good. All good. One, we do see China as a market. Over 1 billion people, rapidly developing economy. So yes, it is a market. It is a market opportunity. It is an important one. Does it have its own challenges? Definitely yes, and you've touched a few of them. That doesn't mean we should not look at it as an opportunity or as a challenge that we need to deal with. On the constellation that China is developing, I don't see that it doesn't really different than any other competition that we would have. I mean, there are quite a few companies who aspire to deploy constellations for IoT services. When we compare Sky and Space global capabilities to what they plan to do, then it's not even a competition. I mean, we're providing megabits per second, they're providing kilobits per second, we're providing almost real time, they're providing store and forward with high latency. So we feel we have an edge over the competition in our realm, in the segments that we plan to provide. And in that sense, China is not that different. However, China is unique in the sense that it's very difficult to penetrate the Chinese market without having a very strong Chinese partner in order to do that with. And that's also something that we're obviously looking at, as I'm sure each company who plans to provide services in that region is doing. This is the way to do business in that region. Overall, I would say that competition is good. It means that there is a market for what we're doing, and it constantly challenges us to be better at what we're doing, to find new ways to improve, to optimize, and to offer, at the end of the day, a better product to our customer. And that is what will maintain our edge and our ability to serve the market.
Great. Manik here, want to comment on China?
Yeah, we've been working on our LEO constellation since about 2015. And what we've realized that the value proposition is great to the end customer, but building a constellation is complex. I'm not just talking about the supplier ecosystem, but the trade space is so large that you have to refine and optimize it to the use cases you want to serve. Are you consumer? Are you broadband? Are you fixed? Are you mobile? So and then there's a spectrum issue. So which spectrum are you talking about? Are you KU band, KA band? You're going to Q and V band. So and all of that then comes to the user terminal because you want to have it all useful. So my point is, we still have to see what kind of use cases China wants to address with its constellation, and perhaps there is a complementary. It's not that all constellations are the same. Even all the LEO constellations that are in play today, everyone is taking a different view, has different designs, and addresses, I think, reasonably, there are some different use cases. So as plans become more clear about China, I think we'll have to see, and I'm hoping it's more complementary.
Good point. Maybe Harsh, I want to move a little bit more onto the commercial strategy distribution topic. One of the things we've recently started to hear is that the market is moving gradually away from take or pay to more kind of usage-based models or pay-as-you-go, especially for cell backhaul. And one of the markets you already mentioned, 4G backhaul, right, being a key market. Do you see as well kind of a change from different business models being and basically the satellite operator taking more market risk, right? Because at the end, obviously, take or pay, you have some market risk. If you have a revenue share or pay-as-you-go model, you take on more. So do you as SCS see that trend? Do you drive on that trend as well? Or just to understand a little bit your views on that.
Yeah, so Nathan, absolutely. The market is shifting. I mean, from take or pay to pay as you grow. And absolutely, mobile operators are demanding that we play a bigger role, in their business. I don't see it necessarily bad. Honestly, because I think the network expansions that are happening, the underlying network getting upgraded, they're also venturing into markets where the revenues are unknown at times, and they need support. Without real, clear, closable business case, the mobile operators generally wait for USO subsidies to come their way, and then they have a very thin route pipe to clearly have a tick in the box. But I would say Bhakti is an exception because they've done exceptionally well. But I think the relationship is moving away from a vendor-buyer relationship to a more partnership model. There has been discussions where I've been part of where, these are like really global mobile operators and regional mobile operators who are talking about volume-based billing commitments, right? Not in Mbps or Gbps, but talking about bytes that we'll commit you so many terabytes a month. There are a number of sites. You manage and operate a fully managed service. We not want to take care of the capex. So we don't shy away from that. A case in point is Telenor Myanmar, where we've been operating their 4G service in northern Myanmar and also in Pakistan. We operate for Telenor Pakistan, these MEO services, where we have taken the ownership for a full managed solution. They don't invest in the terminal. We act as a mobile operator to the towerco. We pay the rental to the towerco for leasing the ground space and the power from them. And really, Telenor gets a fully end-to-end managed service. They have the flexibility to move this terminal as the network expands. So it's more of a, you can call it cell on wheels, that as the fiber reaches the site, it's reliable. They want to move this terminal now to further down the road into further rural areas. So we've given that flexibility to them that we'll move the terminal within a certain time period. So I think that shift is definitely happening. It will continue to evolve, but we're definitely seeing mobile operators demanding, like you said, revenue sharing, taking some risk. But I think, what I agree also with my colleagues that flexible, scalable, I think dynamic solutions that we all will probably bring to the market will help them.
Good. And Manic, does the Telesat Lightspeed also facilitate different kind of, let's say, business models in working with either mobile operators or other kind of clients?
Yeah, indeed. Since Lightspeed is also a fully managed network, it's not renting megahertz anymore. It's like a fiber network. We will give the flexibility to customers about how do they want to buy or use this network. Could be a flow model, like a megabyte or gigabyte model, could be a capacity model. But most customers, they do understand that the minimum demand that they will expect, so they're okay to do a base amount of commitment, and then as demand grows, they're getting more. They may get more comfortable moving that. Maybe it's first year it is some part is fixed and then it's variable, and then second year they've upped their threshold and that keeps upping. They're just looking for a guarantee that demand will be there in their markets. But this is more on the, let's say, on the backhaul or on the terrestrial side. Whereas on the mobility side, since we are kind of starting from a very low base, most providers we talk to, and this is the markets that I think Mayor was mentioning about Japan, Korea, Australia. I mean, it's a different league in the APAC region. There they are very much comfortable with making commitments and growing from there.
So Mir, yeah, interesting question for you. How do you offer your services? It's like an end-to-end service, or how do you work with your partners? Can you help us understand what kind of way you're providing your services to clients? Is envisioned?
Sure. So our concept is B2B. So we work with channel partners. Those may be telcos, those may be ISP providers or resellers or of satellite connectivity, or they may even be ICT integrators, companies who provide IoT services. They're doing this today using cellular networks, and we open up opportunities for them in areas where there's no coverage, or for the maritime sector, which is underserved as far as satellite connectivity is concerned. Today, it's a premium service which costs a lot of money and is denied from quite a lot of maritime vehicles, the small to medium boats. So that is usually our approach, and our customers are signing a contract with us. We're not selling them capacity. We're selling a service. We're a service provider. We're building an infrastructure in space, and using that infrastructure, we're providing a connectivity service. The fact that we're doing it with satellites should be transparent to the customer. I mean, the customer shouldn't really care. All he cares about is getting his connectivity, how we're doing it, with what kind of technology. We try to keep it as transparent as possible. So our product is a plug and play product. Our ground terminal. This is, I have it on my desk. So this is what we're talking about, a very small device, plug and play, creates a local Wi-Fi. You can connect anything to it, LoRa, Sigfox, whatever, or just using standard Wi-Fi connectivity. So the goal is to make life as easy as possible to the customer once he decides to use our services and our capabilities that we offer.
One question about a terminal: is it your own architecture? It's a closed system, or could it also work with other type of systems?
No, it's a good question. One of our advantages is the fact that we control every segment is the system. So we have developed the network management software, and the software itself sits on the ground terminal, on the satellites, on each and every gateway or micro gateway, in the ground station, wherever. So we control everything in the entire system, in every segment of it. Having said that, as I've said, the terminal is a plug and play. The system is IP based. Every user and every sensor, every component in the system has its own IP address. That makes things a lot easier to manage and to control. It's almost like building a mini internet using our network and our mesh of satellites and routers in space.
Great. Time is almost up. I wanted to address one more topic, and that's, I think, what's pretty stands out, the Asia Pacific regions in general, but some countries like Indonesia is a classic example of the government support, right? So we really see this increasing support from government to support connectivity in general, but also satellite connectivity. But in your view, what is the most cost-effective or most effective way of, government support you can expect? Would you expect terminal subsidy? We didn't really had much time to address terminals, but obviously the cost of the terminal from NGSO perspective, the industry is driving this down, but it's always been a little bit of a challenge. So that can definitely obviously be valuable. Or is it more on the service offtake? I mean, in your own views, what would be kind of the most effective way of government support? I can understand everything is great in a certain way, but if you would have to pick, what do you believe it from a commercial market perspective would be the most effective solution? So maybe Harsh, I'll give it first to you.
Yeah, Nathan, I think it varies from country to country. We can't generalize it. But what I see, the financial subsidy in the USO project has worked very well. In Bhakti, for example, it's working to an extent with DICT. MCMC has been doing well as well. I think that should continue. I don't think the terminal subsidy will make or break the business case, honestly. Because I think the terminal, as the terminal's volume scale on the NGSOs, the cost will get optimized. The flat panel antennas will become more efficient and more cost effective as we move along. I think what I look forward to is more of a light touch regulation environment where when the true connectivity potential is unleashed by giving access and a fair market access to all operators. Spectrum, which is absolutely precious for satellite operators as well as for mobile operators. We're seeing some heated debates and arguments about who owns this 27.5 to 28.5 in India. So I think, that way we will need support from the regulators so that that spectrum, there's some, justifiable spectrum sharing policy with mobile operators. Satellites get access to it. Their K-band gateways can be protected. And I think more of a fair and market access would do. I won't think that end user terminal subsidy is going to make or break with the business.
Interesting. Yeah, Manik, maybe what is higher on your wish list in terms of government support?
I 100% agree with Harsh. We as industry are driving down the cost of the terminals, so we'll definitely get to low-cost terminals. It's more on the service side, most of these countries have a very large funds collected as USO levies over time. It's being unspent. It's being unused right now as we speak. So if from a procedural perspective, making it easy, making it clear, how do you access those USO funds if you are connecting underconnected or underserved communities? I think that will help a lot the ISPs and telcos.
Mer, I'll give you the last opportunity to talk to us on this topic. So, your views on government support, is it something you're seeking for part of the business plan or business case, or is it something that you're not necessarily looking for or expect to receive?
Yeah, so again, I apologize that we're not helping you with any sparks between us or big arguments, but I agree. I mean, there are two things that the government can help with. One is, and that's the more important one, as Harsh and Manik had said, that's creating the right kind of environment and ecosystem. Help with the regulatory, reduce the bureaucracy, the landing rights, the spectrum, the type approval, all of this. If the governments will create the right ecosystem, the market will follow, because there is a demand for the services that all of us plan to provide. The other thing is the financial support. There are many ways to skin that cat. It can be through subsidies to terminals, although our terminal is extremely low cost already, give or take $100. But government subsidies for the service or helping providing grants, this is less important in my view, because the biggest hurdle is the regulatory ecosystem. If the government does not provide you a landing right, there's nothing you can do. Doesn't really matter what's the cost of your terminal or your service. You just cannot operate in that region. And I think it's our duty to explain to the government and government officials and to the citizens that will create, hopefully, some pressure on the governments. How can the space-based assets help the countries, help connectivity, help stimulate the economy, help improve education, healthcare, almost every aspect of living in every country is improved if you provide connectivity. And there are large areas, as we have said, that the only way to provide that connectivity is from space. So we need to continue to educate the government officials and the governments themselves and the executives. And by that, hopefully, help them to create an ecosystem that will help us as companies who plan to and strive to provide these services.
I think the message is clear. Thank you all for today. I think it was a great discussion. Thank you, APSCC, for bringing us together. And please check out all the other great webinars provided by APSCC on the website. So have a great day and hope to see you soon again.
Thank you so much for that, Nathan. Thank you very much, Harsh. Thank you very much, Meyer. And obviously, thank you, Manik. Excellent to hear your input from each of your companies and individuals. We look forward to seeing more in the Constellation space going forward. If you are interested in finding out more about Constellations, finding out more about any of the topics we've done in the past, our webinar series is all available on apsccsat.com. You can see them, where you're watching this website. Just pass down and you can find. Obviously, we are changing them from time to time, so the schedule might change going forward. But generally speaking, you can find out what we're doing several weeks in advance by looking at that schedule. And obviously, months and months in the past, all of the previous webinars are available on that website as well. Now, apscc.or.kr is the main website for APSCC, the organization. If you're interested in finding out more about what we're doing, what our activities are, and how to join the association, please do have a link there. Have a look there to that link, apscc.or.kr. Either way, we look forward to seeing you soon here on our webinar series. And thanks again for joining us.